The first ever statewide hand recount now underway.
There's 100 tables, there's 6 people per table, and they're only counting the over and under votes.
Kamala Harris under fire for drawing parallels between ICE and the KKK.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
Puts ICE in the same category as the KKK. Is that what you're asking me?
Shame on Kamala Harris. She need to talk about her party, who created the KKK to intimidate, manipulate in order to dominate.
Nancy Pelosi facing resistance from Democrats to become House Speaker.
The best thing for Republicans is to have her in that role. She reminds them why they don't like Democrats.
President Trump visiting with Marines yesterday, highlighting his administration's efforts to improve veterans' care.
Military families are the backbone of our nation.
No president in modern history has made veterans and veterans issues a top-tier part of their campaign.
Art Unruh, Air Force Staff Sergeant, he will get this crowd whipped up as that flag is raised. We thank him and all the men and women who serve.
It's Friday.
Yeah, and we want to shine.
Some moonshine.
Yes,
Just kidding.
Yeah,
Just
we want.
kidding.
I like to upgrade a little bit from moonshine. Thanks. All right, here we are. We are talking still about election season, not election day, and we have a Fox News alert. Ron DeSantis appears to be Florida's next governor after Andrew Gillum gains only 1 vote in the recount by machine, but the Democrat not conceding.
Nope. The first ever statewide hand recount now underway for the hotly contested Senate race.
That's right. And you're looking at it live. Not far from there is Griff Jenkins. He's in Lauderhill, Florida, where the manual votes are being counted. Griff, who are those people behind you?
So the people behind me, Steve, are volunteers heading in for that recount. We'll take you in there in a second. But first, you mentioned Ron DeSantis. He will, in every likelihood, become the next governor of Florida because he leads Andrew Gillum in the second recount by more than 33,000 votes. That is a margin of 0.41%. Although Gillum will not concede yet. He put out a statement saying, quote, while our race has fallen outside the window for a manual recount, we still believe that before the election results are certified, the state of Florida must count every legal cast vote, but you have to have a 0.25% to get to that hand recount. DeSantis Gillum will not go there, and on Tuesday we expect the state to certify Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, inside this room, take a look at this. This is the hand recount. They're just going through training right now. It's about to begin any minute, and here's how it's set up. 100 tables. There's 6 people at each table. 2 are election officials, 4 are lawyers or representative of the lawyer teams, 2 Democrat, 2 Republican, and they're only counting the over and under votes. That means that they either mark too much or too little. And take a look at this, guys. I was just in there, the training manual. This is on every table, and they're handing it out to all the people. There's going to be 4 bins on each table. Those over-under votes will be decided upon at each table as either clearly Republican, clearly Democrat, clearly no vote, meaning nobody marked it, or green, canvassing board. They say inside the catchphrase is green means go to canvassing board. That means the Republican and Democrat representatives at each table have disagreed, and that will be a contested ballot. Likely it is over what the voter intent is. Now, sometime this weekend, we hope this process of what is anticipated to be 30,000 over-under votes, at least here in Broward, to be decided upon, and we'll find out what the legal challenges are there as this very close Senate race plays out. We expect the same thing in Palm Beach County, but they're taking a little while to get there. Guys?
Indeed. Griff, real quick before you go, the green one, where the canvassing board is going to try to figure out voter intent. Have they hired a team of mind readers to figure this out? How do they know what the person intended?
So they look at the ovals and see each table, the representatives from Republicans or Democrats look at it and say, well, that looks like a Nelson or that looks like a Scott. And if there's disagreement, the canvassing board then decides it. But if the canvassing board decides something that the lawyers on either side disagree with, then they can ask for a legal challenge and try and move it to a court.
The entire table,
that's why Florida took so long in 2000.
So the entire table will look at one ballot at a time, so not one person can lie, right? They're all looking at each ballot and determining what it is.
Right.
So it's not just one opinion.
That's correct. That's
okay.
exactly
right.
That's exactly how it works. Everybody looks.
If you can't do your ballot, you shouldn't count the ballot. Come on, people. By the way, there's a breaking story now that Stacey Abrams' campaign and legal team is preparing. This is the governor's race in Georgia. Is preparing an unprecedented legal challenge in the unresolved governor's race. Unresolved, but Brian Kemp leads by 55,000 votes. They are claiming that they're an accusation that 50,000 new voter registrations were not counted. 200 polling places were closed, and 1 in 10 Georgia voters were taken from the rolls.
She's talking about disenfranchisement, and so what she would like to do is not have a recount. She would like a revote, which is unprecedented. We need a great legal mind, and Geraldo Rivera is at our disposal right now. He joins us, as you can see. Geraldo, what do you think about, okay, so she's way behind for the most part, for all intents and purposes, and now she's asking for a revote, not a recount, a revote.
Although it appears she has lost to Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State in Georgia, 50-odd thousand votes. In Georgia, it's weird, but the winner has to get above 50%. So my thinking was that her legal strategy was to show that Kemp did not get over 50%. In Florida, for instance, DeSantis beat Gillum. Both of them had 49%. In other words, no one in Florida won above 50% in the governor's race. If that were Georgia, that would automatically trigger a re-election. You have to vote again because neither party got over 50%. So Abrams, I thought, was trying to show that Kemp won, maybe, but he didn't win with over 50%. Therefore, there should be this whole second election. My prediction in both the Georgia governor, Florida governor, and Florida Senate is that it will be as it appeared on Election Day. For all the, the noise, all the sound and fury, all the lawyers. And remember, a lawyer's job in an election context is to minimize your opponent's vote while maximizing your own vote. They're not in it for truth. They're in it for a partisan result. But that's
Geraldo,
what gums it up. Armies of lawyers.
But what about the responsibility? They're so critical of President Trump saying, if I lose Pennsylvania, there's got to be something underhanded going on. And now all of a sudden we have Cory Booker, Hillary Clinton, as well as Sherrod Brown, who wants to be the Democratic nominee, saying that if this was an above-board vote, Stacey Abrams would be the governor. Essentially saying Brian Kemp cheated without providing any proof of that. And these are 3 of the highest-profile Democrats out there. How irresponsible is that in your mind?
It's grotesquely irresponsible. I just want to give an aside. You mentioned Sherrod Brown, my senator here in Ohio, who defied the odds of all Democrats losing in Ohio. He won. He is a very formidable candidate, I believe, maybe the leading candidate, although he hasn't got much press outside of Ohio. I think Sherrod Brown will be the leading Democratic contender in the early stages of that context. Now, in terms of criticizing the electoral process, it is almost traditional for someone who is winning to say, oh, that person who is challenging is undermining the electoral process. A shame on them. And until it becomes them who is on the short end of the stick, and they say, oh, no, you've got to challenge this. Our rights have been violated. Our rights have been circumvented. We didn't get an equal opportunity and all the rest of it. They challenge when they lose. These are very, very close races. Georgia and Florida are basically 50-50 states. They are tied. And that's where you need an infallible voting process and machinery. We don't have that. We have an ad hoc patchwork county-by-county system that defies logic. It is anti-intellectual. It is ripe with the opportunity for subjective input. And I think that's why you're not getting any kind of confident result. But I think that you'll go, in this case, I repeat, I think in Georgia it's settled. Kemp will be the governor. DeSantis in Florida, and I think that
our
old pal, the former Governor Rick Scott,
they're warming up for 2020. Let's delegitimize.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Senator Kamala Harris. During the confirmation hearing for Ron Vitiello, who is the nominee to head the ICE agency, she had an exchange with him and asked if he believed the public's perception of ICE was creating fear and distrust in the way the KKK did last century. Listen to this, and we'll get your reaction.
Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel between what is constitutionally mandated as it relates to enforcing the law.
Are you aware that there's a
people's rights.
perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a
that puts
perception?
ICE in the same category as the KKK?
What's your reaction?
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is way too savvy, way too experienced, way too smart to try to compare a group of federal law enforcement agents with a racist, violent, terrorist organization. It's like people who compare others to Nazis. I can't stand it. It is appalling. She should apologize to the ICE agents right now. They have nothing in common with the KKK, and to suggest that, to raise that specter of violent racist terrorism as being the motivating force behind American immigration enforcement is really beyond the pale. That's not politics. That's slander, and she should apologize right now to those ICE agents. I've got my own problems with ICE enforcement and removal. Right. I think that sometimes in the dark of night I don't like it, but it has nothing to do with these, these historical obscenities that she is invoking for a cheap political thrill.
Apologize, Geraldo says. Geraldo, thank you very much for joining us from your hometown, new hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Geraldo. Good to see you.
I remember when he used to live in New Jersey, and
He still
sometimes
does.
in New York. He does.
Still has a house.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have to remember that far back.
Yeah.
Thoughts from Brian. He remembers when he lived in New Jersey, John.
I do. I knew Geraldo then.
Wow, that is a great story.
Goes way back.
I hope you tell the story again. While I'm doing the headlines, turn around. There's a group of people who want you guys to wave to them. So here's a look at what's going on in the East Coast. This weather has been really extreme. The East Coast's first snowstorm of the season, claiming at least 7 lives. This is a live look at the cleanup in Philadelphia right now, where the city had its biggest November snowfall in 3 decades. The storm causing a mess on the George Washington Bridge in New York City. Airlines forced to cancel or delay more than 6,000 flights. Some passengers in Boston had to sleep on the floor and on baggage carousels. Wow. Also breaking, an American citizen held in North Korea for a month will be deported. The man reportedly illegally entered the country from China. No other details have been released. State media also announcing overnight North Korea is testing a new ultra-modern tactical weapon. This despite promising to scale back their nuclear program. Details about the weapon are unclear. And today, President Trump will honor 7 people with the nation's highest civilian honor. Among the Presidential Medal of Freedom honorees are Elvis Presley, Babe Ruth, and late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. The award recognizes Americans who have made a significant contribution or impact to the United States.
Babe Ruth, what took so long?
Elvis.
Come on.
It's quite a
Congrats,
list.
Tom.
When you have to put the picture and it's black and white, you know it's been too long.
Probably right. All right, Jillian, thank you.
We are back with a Fox News alert. At least 66 people confirmed dead and more than 600 missing as wildfires pave a path of destruction in California.
All right, the President of the United States will get a first-hand look at the devastation. He'll be out there tomorrow.
Jeff Paul is live in Malibu, California, as the winds start to die down a little bit. Right, Jeff?
Yeah, they are, and crews are starting to lift some of those evacuation orders, and we're getting a better idea of just how vast these damages are, both here in Southern California and in the north part of the state. That's where there is a desperate search this morning for hundreds of unaccounted people as a result of that Camp Fire. Now, authorities, along with volunteers, have been searching through the wreckage, looking for any remains in a fire that's wiped out the entire town of Paradise, California. 631 people now are considered unaccounted for. The official death toll now sitting at 63. That number, though, likely to rise with so many still missing. Now, Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke again touring some of the hardest hit spots yesterday with Governor Jerry Brown, where both men are saying something has to change.
It's unsustainable to have this happen year after year, or have a season like this where you have 100,000-acre fires becoming routine. We're a great nation. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is an American issue, and we should address it as such.
Now, the president is scheduled to visit California tomorrow. We're expecting some more details, but this visit comes days after the president sent out a tweet criticizing the state for poor forest management. He later softened his tone, calling the damages catastrophic, saying, "God bless them all," when referring to firefighters and this fire's victims. Back to you.
All right, Jeff Paul, live in Malibu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Democrats are divided over Nancy Pelosi, but that's not the only battle within the party. They are far apart on their agenda and even how to investigate President Trump as well. They can't agree on that. So will they be able to govern?
Plus, you've seen these kinds of videos.
All right, quick headlines now. Michael Avenatti is still considering a presidential run despite being arrested for domestic violence. That according to USA Today, which is free in most hotels. The famed attorney for Stormy Daniels denies the charge stemming from a confrontation at his Los Angeles apartment with an unidentified woman. And Beto O'Rourke blogging about a run he took near the U.S. Capitol. Now, many people are speculating it could be a hint about a White House run. In his post, O'Rourke quotes Abraham Lincoln, who's the only American to lose a Senate race and win the presidency 2 years later. Ainsley.
All right. Thank you, Brian. A growing number of House Democrats are saying no to Nancy Pelosi as the House Speaker.
The American people sent a very strong message in the election last week that we want new approaches to politics and new leaders in Washington.
I believe we need change, and so I'm supporting change.
We're going to bring change. The people want change, and this is the establishment versus change.
Well, from their leadership to their agenda to division within the party, are Democrats going to be able to get anything done? Here to debate is Republican strategist Liz Copeland and Democratic strategist Kristen Hahn. Thank you both for being with us. Liz, thank you. Liz, I'll start with you. What do you think about this? Because the Democrats aren't able to agree on whether or not they're socialists or they're more moderate. They can't agree on how to investigate the president, if they'll impeach the president. Will they be able to get anything done?
That's a really good question, and I doubt that they will be able to get anything done. Look, the gloves are off. You can see that the infighting has already began. Nancy Pelosi has been decided by 17 members of the House publicly that they are not going to support her. 5 members are saying privately that they're not going to support her. Many members ran against Nancy Pelosi, telling their voters that they were not going to support her when they got there. And you see Marcia Fudge, she's pending opposition to her to be Speaker. Never before have you seen this type of division and infighting before they're even sworn in.
Yeah, Kristen, what do you think will happen? Who do you think will be the Speaker? Will it be Nancy?
Well, I mean, I think that the leadership elections they're happening next week. I would like to make the point that we won a pretty decisive victory in the House last week. And that was due to a lot of common sense, middle of the road, moderate Democrats winning their races. Those were people like Abigail Spanberger in Virginia and Xochitl Torres-Small in New Mexico. And these members have talked about working across the aisle to get things done. And let's remember that there is a Republican Senate. So in order to get anything done, the Democrats are going to have to work with the Republicans and vice versa.
Well, you have these 17 individuals in the House that are Democrats that are saying they don't want Nancy Pelosi to be the Speaker of the House, and they are throwing their support behind Marcia Fudge. Listen to what Nancy Pelosi said about the resistance within her own party.
The election were held today on the House floor. Do you have the votes to be elected Speaker?
Yes.
What do you make of Marcia Fudge trying to challenge you or considering challenge?
Say to everybody, come on in, the water's warm.
Well, Liz, she went on to say that most of these were men that were signing that letter that were saying they didn't want her to be the Speaker, so she was using the gender card. What was your reaction?
Well, I think it's interesting that she says for everyone just to come on in, the water is warm. The reality is, I think that Nancy Pelosi knows that she has got a pretty strong handle on her caucus. And in Washington, D.C., they say she rules with an iron fist in a velvet glove, that she has a certain touch. And it's interesting, my colleague on the left says that there are a lot of the representatives who came into Congress are common sense. But you think about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's joining protesters, 200 protesters inside the office of not only another member of Congress, but another member within her party, one who holds leadership. I don't think, one, that's common sense, and two, that it speaks to a collaborative approach to what we want Congress to do, which is govern.
Kristen, do you agree with Liz?
I agree with with her assessment. I do not agree that I think AOC, as people are calling her, is representative of the majority of our caucus. There's a lot of attention on her for a lot of different reasons, and she won her district, which is great. But there are many more of the people that I'm talking about that want to work with the president, that want to work with the other side of the aisle.
AOC. Hadn't heard that one. Thanks so much. All right, Liz, Kristen, we appreciate you being with us. Have a great
Thank
weekend.
you.
All right, members of the caravan protesting at the border and requesting asylum, some even admitting that they want to overwhelm Border Patrol agents. Chief Patrol Agent Rodney Scott says there is a crisis happening right now, and he joins us next. Plus, a group caught on camera.
All right, the migrant caravan already making their request for asylum as more groups close in on the United States.
But with multiple warnings against entering illegally and U.S. troops amassed at the border, what can migrants expect when they try to cross over?
Here to weigh in, Chief Patrol Agent of San Diego Sector, U.S. Border Patrol, Rodney Scott, joins us from out in San Diego. Mr. Scott, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning.
So, Chief, give us an update on what's going on, because we've been reporting that parts of at least one of the caravan, at least 800 people, are in just south of where you are in San Diego, in Tijuana. Give us an update on their plan to ask for asylum, or just to ask whether or not we'll let them in.
So you're correct. We've been monitoring these caravans for a few weeks now as they come up through Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico. We've been monitoring the violent tactics that they've used. That's very unique. And they started arriving in Tijuana earlier this week. The first group was about 90, then the next day about 340, and then another group of about 800. We saw them start to use some of the same tactics when they arrived in Tijuana, out on the beach, up on the border fence, starting to tear apart infrastructure. But we've been preparing for a couple weeks now. We've surged in resources. Department of Defense has been helping us harden the border. What that really means is using concertina wire, building obstacles, making it harder to cross between the ports of entry. And we've been staffing up our ports of entry to make sure that that we're ready and that we're not going to be overwhelmed by a bunch of people trying to cross the border.
Are you ready? Because they do want to overwhelm you. There was this guy, Henry Salinas. He was interviewed by Time Magazine. He's 30 years old, and he says this is what they plan to do. It's going to be all against one, one against all of Central America against one, and one against Central America, all against Trump and Trump against all. So they want to overwhelm. They all want to come in at one time. How are you going to prevent them from doing that?
So I think that rhetoric is telling of what makes these caravans different than the ones in the past. But we've been getting ready before this actually happened. We've got nearly 8 miles of new border wall constructed here in San Diego. That construction is ongoing, so that creates some vulnerabilities for us, but that's what Department of Defense has been helping us put in place. I have a great relationship with the U.S. Attorney here, though, and anybody that crosses a border between the ports of entry that's amenable to prosecution, we will charge them with illegally entering the United States. And then the President's proclamation that was recently enacted or put out as an interim rule, you'll be ineligible for asylum if you illegally cross between the ports of entry. So part of it is our messaging, but part of it is our response. And we have shifted several hundred Border Patrol agents into the area. We have better technology than we've had in years. We've unfortunately had to pull people from other areas along the border where they were already gainfully employed. But we're not going to let people mass across the border here in San Diego.
All right, a couple of things. We're going to show some video now. It's not your sector, but it's an important sector, Yuma, Arizona. They look at your barbed wire, and they're coming with cutters. So they're starting to see it here, cutting away. And back to what you said you noticed. You said you've noticed violence. So the caravan members that have already gotten to Tijuana, you've noticed they're a violent group?
I wouldn't say they all are, but I think anytime you have massive numbers of people, your worst actors leverage that for cover, if you will. So within hours of the first couple of groups coming, we had clashes at the border. We had people throwing rocks and bottles across at agents. I think some of that was videoed out at Borderfield State Park on the beach. We had a few people getting up on the fence and starting to cut the wire. However, 2 of them I'll highlight. The one ended up being an individual from Guatemala with an extensive criminal history prior in the U.S. He was arrested by the Mexicans and I believe is being deported back to Guatemala. So I have a great partnership with my counterparts to the south, and they're helping me out to the extent they can to take out those bad actors as well.
Right.
So this is a multi-pronged approach.
Mr. Scott, real briefly, do you have any idea how many of the migrants that you've heard about intend to ask for asylum versus just want to come to the United States?
So I can't give you a real number, but I did meet with Mexican counterparts yesterday. I know here in Tijuana that the government met with a large group of the migrants that showed up. They offered them a shelter and they offered them some assistance. A few, primarily family groups, did take that assistance. Mexico has also offered them asylum. few are having those conversations. But they were a little disappointed that a large portion of the group refused to go to a local shelter. They didn't want to have a curfew overnight. And they said the same thing you said a minute ago. They intended to try to wait for others and then mass across the border.
Rodney, we've heard that the moms and the kids are going to the shelters in Tijuana, and a lot of the men were sleeping outside and on the beaches because the shelters were getting full. What percentage are you seeing are moms and kids versus men?
So I've seen the same reports you have, but what we've physically seen face to face, and then most of the videos that I've seen, these groups are primarily adult males. There are definitely families mixed in, but it's well over 50% that are just single adults. They would have a more challenging asylum claim.
All right, Rodney Scott, a Chief San Diego Sector Patrol Agent. Sir, thanks for getting up so early to report.
Thank you for what you do. Thanks, Rodney.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
All right.
All right. We have some breaking news on WikiLeaks. Jillian Mealy has that and more.
That's right. And some new information. So let's get right to this Fox News alert. WikiLeaks now responding to the possible indictment against Julian Assange from the U.S. Assange's attorneys say the notion is, quote, an incredibly dangerous precedent and a grave violation of press freedoms. Court documents filed in Virginia say the DOJ is preparing the charges under seal. But a district court spokesperson says Assange's name was not intended to be included in the filing. A homeless veteran and a couple face up to 10 years in prison for allegedly fooling the nation to get rich quick. Prosecutors say they made up a story about the homeless vet spending his last $20 on gas for the woman who was stranded on the side of the road, leading to a GoFundMe page that took in more than $400,000. Now it's believed they actually met each other at least a month earlier. Investigators finding text messages between Caitlin McClure and a friend reading, quote, the gas part is completely made up, but the guy isn't. I had to make something up to make people feel bad. All right, stop what you're doing and watch this. A terrified mother runs over to her choking infant to an Arkansas fire station, begging for someone to save his life. Now, you can see a firefighter in this video slapping the child's back, working frantically to clear his airways. That hero first responder says the baby was completely blue. It took 15 seconds to get there. Very happy to report that he is doing just fine. So, what a hero. A moment of kindness caught on camera. A man spotted on home surveillance returning a lost wallet in Washington, D.C.
Usually when you lose your wallet in a city, it's gone. And so is sometimes your identity and credit cards, and those kinds of things can haunt you for a while. So I'm extremely grateful and know that I'm really lucky.
The woman hopes someone will recognize the man, and she wants people to say thank you. She wants to say thank you. Let's look at your headlines. Don't you love when you hear stories like that, Good Samaritan stories?
He found the wallet, went to her house, and looked like he was putting it in her mailbox.
Yep.
Now that we're within surveillance state, we can see all good news, all good news and bad news.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, Jillian.
Your life's on camera. Welcome.
And so is Janice Deans, and she joins us right now with the Foxcast. And we had, I like that headline, Snowvember.
Snowvember, yes. In some cases, the earliest snowfall on record across some of the southern states, and we hit a record in Central Park, the heaviest snowfall in November, the second heaviest snowfall in November. So you can see with those snow totals, we outdid ourselves here. Over 18 inches in parts of upstate New York, a foot in Pennsylvania, close to a foot in Connecticut. We are not done with this storm yet. We're still going to watch it for the next couple of hours into tonight, but then it will be out of here, which is great news. But of course, we had quite a trying day, especially across the Northeast. Roads weren't treated. A lot of folks were on the roads for many hours trying to get home. But things are looking better. I actually saw some sunshine out on 48th and 6th, which is great. Here is your forecast for today. Looking good across the Great Lakes and the Northeast once we get this storm out of the way. A little bit of lake effect snow. Northern Rockies, Northern Plains, that's where we could see our next Clipper system, a quick moving storm that's not going to last a long time, but it is going to bring a little bit of snow. And then the West Coast. The good news here is we're going to see a little bit of rain in the forecast heading into next week. Here is a look ahead to your Thanksgiving Day. That's, of course, happening this week, next week, rather. And the good news is it looks very quiet with seasonal temperatures. So no storms in the forecast right now, but we will certainly keep an eye on it.
I like that dancing turkey up there.
Dancing turkey. It's Friday.
There's Janice
right.
being the dancing machine. All right, JD. All right, straight ahead, President Trump has said he may shut down the government if Congress doesn't give him enough money for the border wall. We're going to talk to current House Majority Whip Steve Scalise about that coming up next.
Plus, a special edition of Cooking with Friends. Steve
Very special.
is making a Ducey family favorite from his new cookbook.
Great Christmas gift.
Is Steve Ducey going to be here for that segment?
I heard he is coming in.
He's tough to book.
He might bring some family members, too.
I haven't seen him in the green room. Know why? He's on the set. All right, counsel to the President Kellyanne Conway hitting Congress for not fixing America's immigration issues.
Republican and Democratic Congresses, frankly, have failed to meet the president's very modest demands on ending the visa lottery system, ending chain migration. He was willing to do a deal on DACA, the Dreamers, as you know. And of course, I think one of the centerpieces, the wall funding. $1.6 billion is a modest down payment for the security of this nation.
Here with reaction is Congressman Steve Scalise, House Majority Whip and author of Back in the Game, One Gunman, Countless Heroes, and The Fight for My Life. He joins us from our nation's capital. Mr. Scalise, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to be with y'all.
All right. So, you know, we've been hearing for a couple of years the president wants to build the wall. The House has approved $5 billion. The Senate, 1.6, it sounds like. It sounds like the House wants to build the wall more than the Republicans in the Senate.
Well, I agree with Kellyanne that more needs to be done. You know, we've been working with President Trump to secure the border. More needs to be done there. You can see it with the caravan. There are serious threats to our national security that need to be addressed. And there are big loopholes that need to be closed, too. And some of them she talked about, this lottery that makes absolutely no sense, where thousands of people are let in, literally where their names are plucked out of a hat. It should be a merit-based system. That's what President Trump wants. That's what I'd sure like to see us do. We've got a few weeks left to try to get this done.
And what leverage do you have to get it done? I mean, you guys can pass it out of the House. It's a lame duck session. You have the majority in the Senate. So what is going on behind the scenes? Anything?
There are a lot of negotiations that are going on, and we've been working with the White House and the Senate, trying to get some kind of agreement that addresses what President Trump wants to see in terms of both funding for the border wall, as well as closing so many of these loopholes. And so we're going to keep working. Hopefully we get an agreement, and we need one to get our nation secured much stronger than it is today.
What do you think about this resistance against Nancy Pelosi? You have these never Nancys that have signed this letter, and she's saying most of them are men, so she's saying that's not fair. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think you're seeing a growing opposition to Nancy Pelosi within her own Democrat ranks. You saw during the campaign there were a lot of people who flipped seats from Republican to Democrat that ran, not saying that they wanted to resist the president and to impeach the president. They ran practically saying they're pro-life and pro-gun and against Nancy Pelosi. There are going to be some important votes that come up to tell whether or not they're going to keep their word. And a lot of people are going to be watching.
Do you think he'll deliver Republican votes like the president said he'll do it to make sure she's the next speaker? You see Republicans rallying to make sure she passes?
I wouldn't want to see us get in the way of the internal deliberations that are very important for them to have.
What if the president asked you?
What a politician.
I don't think the president's going to make that direct ask, but I'm sure he's watching it closely as well.
All right. Steve Scalise joining us live from D.C. Congratulations on your election this week.
We're glad you're
Get
we're
back in the
glad
game.
you're back in the game.
Yeah, the book is
We've got copies
unbelievable.
coming to all of you.
Yeah, the
I'm
book
just
is.
trying to...
Yeah, there's so much new in the book that people think they know the story, but in the book it tells the true story and how you struggle for life and how everyone rallied around you, including your relationship with Bono. Now I'm jealous of you for the first time.
There's a lot in here and a lot to be inspirational about. Look, there's so much crazy stuff you're seeing in politics and division. Here's a story where it's not only about unity, but everybody deals with adversity in their life, and to be able to see something like this have a happy ending, a lot of miracles from God, and a lot of heroes that I document in this book, Back in the Game, including how President Trump and Melania came to the hospital and really helped console my wife and kids during those tough times.
Read all about it. A great gift for Christmas. Steve Scalise, thank you very much for joining us live.
Great being with all of you.
And
Thanks.
Steve, of course, you followed him, right? You followed him for a day of the baseball game.
I did, and I was there the night he hit the ball, first pitch.
Right, and made a great play at second base.
Life is so precious.
All
Can't
right.
wait to read that book. You read it.
Yep.
It's very good.
Up next, an exclusive. Thanksgiving at the Ducey household. Not told by somebody else, but told by Steve Ducey, who we've met. It's all in his new cookbook that is now out, and he's going to Florida to talk about it. You'll find out about all those things. There's the co-author, Kathy.